Swearing or no swearing?
That's a difficult for me too.
Well, I will swear. The question is, should I try to control it? Because there is a difference. So would you prefer for me to control it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Fala galerinha da Cigar 019, sejam muito bem-vindos a um vídeo super especial direto aqui da Joya de Nicarágua, porque hoje vamos falar com Steve Saka. Exatamente, Steve Saka vai bater um papo com a gente, então acomode-se em sua poltrona e vem com a gente, porque hoje vai ser sensacional. Mas antes de continuarmos, diretor, aquela vinheta, solta ela para nós. Bom, galerinha, é uma honra, primeiramente, para falar para vocês. Temos Mr. Steve Saka pessoalmente hoje no canal. Fizemos uma live muito assistida por vocês e hoje, pessoalmente, durante a visita aqui na Joya, temos a presença do homem, da lenda, do mito, para conversar aqui com a gente. Vamos bater um papo para falar sobre tabaco, charuto. Sei que ele sabe um pouquinho sobre tudo isso. Eu quero saber do Steve o seguinte, Steve, como começou essa parceria com a Joya de Nicarágua?
Oh, well, so I had been in and out of Joya a few times before, but I don't think they ever realized who I was. The first time it really became formal was when I was president of Drew Estate. We entered into a distribution deal to be the sole distributor of all the Joya de Nicaragua cigars in the United States. So I was part of the negotiation of that. And once that was completed, I was kind of like the key principal person that was the liaison between us at Drew Estate and Joya de Nicaragua. So from, I don't even remember when that began. I'm going to say 2017, 2018, but I could be wrong about it. But pretty much for the 5 years, I pretty much worked closely with Dr. Alejandro Martinez Cuenca and with Mario and all the team here on the joint projects that we did together, and then of course on their own production that we were selling in the United States.
Wow! And today you speak about the family. Martinez is very important to you and your decision for Joya. Talk about this because it's the beautiful story.
Yeah, listen, there's many good factories in Nicaragua, and I have had the pleasure of doing business with almost all of them. But when it came time to decide where I was going to make my blends and have those cigars manufactured, there was really only one place I wanted to begin, and it was with Joya de Nicaragua. And there were multiple reasons, but one of the biggest reasons for me personally was twofold. It's the only factory in Nicaragua factory of size, I should say, that is owned and operated exclusively, entirely by Nicaraguans. I mean, this factory was established in the late 60s. It has the longest history. But on top of that, not only was there that, it was also a family-owned business. There was no big corporation. There was nobody outside of here. So whenever you would have a discussion, whether it be good or whether it be bad, you were always talking to the other principal. And that other principal was very much like our business. We're a small family business. They're a larger family business. But in the end, we're family businesses. And family businesses, they think differently. They operate differently. There's a certain simpatico. I don't even know what the Portuguese translation of that's going to be. Can't wait to see the cry on that
exactly.
one.
Subtitle.
yeah. But I mean, it felt very comfortable to me to work with another family business because, it wasn't just Dr. Alejandro Martinez, the wife Claudia, you knew the son Juan, who is now the president of Joya Nicaragua, son Alex, the daughter Claudia. So look, it's good to do business with people that you know, right? And even if maybe they're not the least expensive, or maybe they aren't the quickest, or maybe they don't have some tobaccos that some other factories have, none of those things are as important as the people, because the people in the end is what ultimately makes the difference. And particularly when you're talking about handcrafted premium cigars, which is something that is so personal, that family connection takes it one step further. So for me, working with Joya was paramount to me.
Uau, incredible. Bom, e eu quero perguntar agora para o Steve, a gente sabe que ele gosta de usar tabacos especiais, eu vou perguntar um pouquinho, já que estamos falando de inspirações por conta da família e tudo mais, eu quero saber do Steve sobre esses tabacos especiais e inspirações que ele usa para compor esses blends.
So I started smoking cigars seriously in the early 80s. And by my rough back of the napkin calculation, I think I've smoked about 108,000 handmade cigars over the last 40 years. Just so everybody's going, there's no way that's possible. I've been pretty much smoking 10 cigars a day or more every day for the last 3 decades. That's 30 years.
Wow.
Right? So right there's like 90,000 cigars. So that doesn't count the ones that you are testing, clipping, lighting, sampling. I'm talking about actually smoking cigars. So I've had a lot of experience smoking cigars. Now, I don't recommend this because you can see the beautiful physical specimen it has made me. But when it comes to cigars, I really understand what I think tastes good, smokes good. I have very specific opinions about what a great cigar is. Now, I am the expert of my own tastes. I'm an expert of my own opinion. And so one of the things that we do at Dunbarton that is very, very different than pretty much every other company that I'm aware of is when I make a blend, nobody gets an opinion. Nothing is ever shared. Nobody gets to test anything. Occasionally Anna will smoke something. Occasionally Mario in the factory will smoke something. But in the end, I'm the one that's the final arbiter of what ends up in a box. So when I make a cigar that ends up in the box, it's a blend that I really personally love and that I personally would be willing to spend the money for. So one of the things that makes Dunbarton unique is the fact that the cigars aren't focus grouped. Because with many products, you have many people that give their opinion, and then they try to make the product to make as many people happy. And I'm of the personal belief, in my experience, that that's impossible, right? Because you can give the same cigar to 10 people, and 3 will tell you it's too mild, and 3 will tell you it's too strong, and this guy will say, oh, I taste a little sour. You can never get a consensus, so don't even try to. You know, what I look at is I have a perspective, I know what I want to do, and I put it in the box, and then I leave it to the consumer to decide whether they like it or they don't like it. Now, they may not like it, right? If your taste buds don't align with my taste buds, then you probably aren't going to be satisfied with my cigars. There's certain things in most of my cigars that are very common traits. I tend to lean more towards the coffee notes. I tend to lean more towards the chocolate notes. I tend to lean more towards the earthy notes. I like spice, but I don't like sharp pepper. So even when I make a strong blend like the one you're smoking now, Querida Black, it's a robust cigar, but it's not a biting cigar.
Exactly.
It's not an uber peppery cigar. So if you're a consumer that loves a super uber pepper bomb, then you're probably not gonna find much in our portfolio that's gonna really satisfy you. Because for me, even when a cigar is strong, it still needs to be smooth. At the same time, even when a cigar is mild, like a Sobremesa Brulee, it also needs to have flavor, right? A mild cigar does not mean that it's wispy and thin, okay? A good mild cigar should be fatty and creamy and lush, right? So for me, these are the things that I really pay attention to. And the other thing that I really focus on, and I know most consumers don't, but I think retrohaling is really important in the process. I think that you get a lot from the process of retrohaling. And even the consumer that doesn't retrohale, you still get a little of it that goes up into your sinuses. So how a cigar retrohales has a big impact on how that blend is ultimately going to smoke. So there's a lot of things that are very unique to the way I approach these blends. And the other thing that I think is very different is I don't have a particular style. In other words, having smoked over 100,000 cigars, I have times where I want a mild cigar. And I have times I want a really strong cigar. And I have times where I want an elegant, sophisticated, complex cigar. And I have times where I want something that's like a chili dog. You know what I mean? So I have all these different moods. So I try to make blends to suit all of these individual moods. So one of the things that is, again, unique to us, if you were to ask customers, they will say, Mi Querida is my very best cigar. And you'll ask another and say, no, Sobremesa is the best cigar he makes. You ask another, it's Sin Compromiso. And the answer is they're all right, because they're all very good for the lane that those cigars are in. So if you're a smoker that likes to smoke across the spectrum, we have a wide range of things for you to try. But if you are a consumer that has a very unique, particular genre that you like, well, hopefully I have something there in the portfolio that's going to match what you personally enjoy in a cigar.
Incredible. Steve, você se sente pressionado de sempre estar fazendo novas coisas, porque o mercado sempre quer novas coisas? Como é que funciona isso?
Yes. Listen, this is a very big transition in the way handmade cigars have become over the last 30 years. Partially it's your fault because of things like this, right? Because media thrives on new, right? So, and consumers are always chasing the next new thing.
Exactly.
So you are perpetually kind of forced to be on the hamster wheel. I'm lucky that I like to make a lot of different things. I'm lucky that I like to smoke a lot of different things. I'm lucky that I seem to generate a lot of blends, probably more than almost anybody else, even companies that are 40 times larger than us, right? But yeah, there's definitely a commercial pressure for that. But also, I do understand that also it has something to do with the age of the consumer. Maybe age is the wrong word, maybe the experience. So when you first start getting into cigars, you feel this burning desire to try all these different things. You want all these different experiences. And I know for me personally, it took me about 10 years, probably about 20,000 cigars before I really started to understand what I really liked and what I didn't really like. Because I would fall in love with something and it would be my favorite, and then 4 months later, like, it was good, but I wasn't in love with it anymore, right? So I was always kissing a different girl, always kissing a different girl. Eventually, as a cigar smoker and as a consumer, you kind of find the things that are right for you, and then you settle in. So what you want is you want to make a cigar that's a very good cigar that has the potential to eventually become the cigar that that person chooses to marry. Now, 40 years ago, they would marry one cigar. Now, even the guys that get married, you know, they get to be about 55, 60. They tend to have like 2 or 3 favorite brands or 2 or 3 favorite makers, and they will go out of their way to try what that particular maker makes, but they don't feel compelled to try everything. And what ends up happening is when you get to that stage, you then end up in the Padron, and you end up in the Oliva stage, and you end up in the Fuente stage, where your core portfolio ends up being what carries you. And then the smaller stuff that you do is kind of like the little salt that you put on the top of the dish so that you can give your loyal fans something interesting and unique to look forward to. So yes, there's definitely economic and commercial pressure to generate new. There's no doubt about it. But lucky for me, I enjoy it. Where it gets really very difficult is when you get into international markets like yours. It's very hard to import new things. Okay. There's serious taxes. Every country, territory has different rules and regulations. Some place you have to pre-register a brand. You have to wait a whole year before you can put it there. Yeah. Where, you know, in the United States market, I can come up with a crazy idea and a year later we can be selling it, right? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work that way internationally. And also, you know, when you're dealing in the US market, you're able to sell to an individual direct retailer, right? Where in the international markets, you're selling to a distributor. And what a distributor has to do is they have to make a very serious financial risk of what they feel they can bring. because they can't bring 4 boxes of this and 2 boxes of that and 6 boxes of that. So they have to pick and choose. And so oddly enough, I think in the international market, you guys are more stable than we are in the US market. Now, I will say the US market is slowly transitioning more. It doesn't look that way when you look at social media and, you know, the half wheel and the PCA, but we are starting to see more rules and regulations regarding paperwork and registrations and required local trademarks that I think you're going to see over the next 2 to 3 years. You're probably going to start to see this slow down a little because just the government regulation is requiring it to be so.
Toda essa conversa que é muito importante para que vocês entendam as diferenças de mercados e para que também falemos algumas diferenças. Hoje o Steve fez uma demonstração, eu vou pedir para que ele repita para que vocês vejam, sobre tabaco, composição de blend, que foi um negócio assim incrível, e eu vou pedir para que ele faça aqui novamente para que vocês vejam e entendam algumas diferenças entre origens de charuto. And Steve, tell us a little about the blend composition lesson you gave us during the visit. From the position of leaves, the disposal of the central vein of the tobacco, whatever. You talk about this during visit today.
Also comparing with the Cuban,
yes,
how they do, they got it.
It's like a job here.
Just resume.
Make a short presentation about.
Short presentation, exactly.
Okay. So today we took a factory tour in Joya, Nicaragua. And you guys have had the luxury of visiting multiple factories. And I think they give one of the best tours here.
Exactly.
They do a really nice history and a nice
Joya.
walkthrough. And I think they do a very good job. One of the things you have to understand that when the people that run these factories are giving you tours, we never know what's interesting or not interesting to the people on the trip, right? Because for them, they do it all day long. And like you made a comment that you visited one factory and said, yep, this is where we make our cigars walk around, right?
Exactly.
So I was just trying to add a little tiny bit of color commentary when Juan was showing you the various components of a cigar and the tools that we use to make a cigar. So I was just trying to exhibit some little additional facts about the way that cigars are crafted. So when you get all this tobacco in front of me, which is just a mix of this and that, let's see what we got here. You know, got some Seco right here. Seco, we got a little Viso, and we got a little Ligero. Okay, good. So they have the 3 different textures of leaves. And what I was trying to point out to the consumers, or to the people on the tour, I should say, because it was a combination of retailers also, was that, you know, in every single cigar handmade that you smoke, there is always these ribs that's in the cigar. You can see the rib right there. And a lot of times consumers will refer to these as stems, but we don't call that a stem, we call that a rib. The stem is the part that goes from the butt of the leaf to the stalk.
Okay.
And what ends up happening is we always do what we call frog stripping. That's where we tear out basically about half to a third of the bottom, depending on the particular tobacco and depending on how thick that rib is. So these ribs, stems, are actually present in every handmade cigar that you buy. If you take a handmade cigar and you just cut it open before you smoke it, you can tell how many long filler leaves are in it by just simply cutting these stems. Now the problem is, for literally decades, magazines, books, social media have all told consumers these are bad, okay? And you have to understand, you're being told this by people that don't actually make cigars, right? You're being told this by salespeople, you're being told this by marketing people. And once something gets said multiple times, for you to be the guy that said, no, that's wrong, well, you're just making an excuse because you're making shitty cigars. So it's kind of like going out on a limb to actually explain to consumers what is actually happening. But that's what I was trying to do with you guys today. And I was trying to point out that in every single cigar, you actually have this And this part is really very critical to the blend. Not only does it have flavor, because it has a heavy concentration of oil in it, but also it's these ribs in the tobacco. Let me see if I can just strip one of these out of here. That ends up giving you the structural rebarb in the bunch that actually allows the ash to stay on the cigar, because the ash is actually being supported by this in the cigar. So this is actually a critical component of the construction. If this wasn't in the blend, not only would it not taste as good, but you would just end up with a hot, flaky mess. So this has to be there. But we end up frog stripping it because the way cigars are bunched, when you simply tube tobacco, you're taking the butt of the cigar and you're flipping it this way, and you're taking the, I got my hand in the wrong place, and you're flipping the tips back this way. The idea is for that stem rib not to be in contact with your mouth, because you don't want to feel it touching your tongue. So really it should stop right about where the band is, okay? So when you're frog stripping the tobacco and when the bonchero is making the cigar, he's taking that in consideration to make sure that that's further up, because if it's closer to the head, then it ends up hitting your tongue and it's really annoying. Now, I know an average consumer would say to you, yeah, I had a cigar, it was tight, and it didn't smoke, and then I pulled that rib out, and all of a sudden now the draw works. Yes, that's true because you've created an air channel in the cigar, but the truth was there's a problem with the bunch because it was supposed to smoke with it there, and all you've done is create an air channel. And oddly enough, when you pull that out now, even though you can get a draw, it won't taste right, because that dramatically affects the flavor because you've taken those oils that are out of the cigar. Now, one of the reasons how this whole myth got created has to do with Cuban cigars. Cuban tobacco is much thinner in texture. So while they also leave the same ribs in, so you can feel in this piece of Seco, I mean, you can see how much thinner this is. On theirs, those ribs are there, but they're so thin that it appears that they're not there. When you smoke a heavier cigar made with Nicaraguan tobacco, those are much thicker, much meatier. Okay, so it was one of the things, and that was also true with the Dominican cigars when they originally were made out of all Dominican tobaccos. That rib was much, much thinner. So it was a way that they could kind of disparage the cigars that were made in Honduras and Nicaragua. So, oh, well, our cigars don't have stems and their cigars do have stems. Okay, but it was really, they both always did. It's just a difference in texture. And one of the other things that while we were talking about that I was mentioning was kind of a significant difference in the way Habanos are bunched compared to non-Cuban cigars. In addition to Cuban tobacco being thinner in texture, it's also typically much shorter.
Exactly.
So when they're making a bunch for a Cuban cigar, they do what we call a break. And they only do one break from the center point, and the center point ends up getting flipped back in the hand like this. So when you do that, what ends up happening is you end up having the middle part of the tobacco always at the foot, okay? And you end up having the tip of the tobacco back near the head. Now, have you ever heard the fact that when have you ever noticed when you're smoking a Cuban cigar, how it gets sour when you get near the band?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a very common trait in Cuban cigars. The reason why is because on any piece of tobacco, regardless of what it is, the tips are always stronger than the butt of the cigar on the blade. The butt of the blade is a milder tobacco than the tip. Well, on Cuban tobaccos, the tip is sour. Okay, so that's why on a Cuban cigar, typically with Cuban cigars, they're not as nubbable. Does that make sense to you? Where you can just smoke it down really short and it's still really good. A lot of times with Cuban cigars, you get to about the band and it starts to, you know how they say it starts to turn. And what it is because you're now into smoking the tips. The reverse to that, because of the cigars that we make outside of Cuba with non-Cuban tobaccos, we have much larger tobaccos. And because we have those larger tobaccos, we don't do that break in the center. What we do is we do two separate breaks. We do a break at the butt, which then gets folded over this direction. And then we do a break at the head, which gets, actually the foot, that gets flipped back this way. And when you do that break, what just happened was I just took the tips and I just put them at the foot of the cigar. And that's one of the reasons why so often when you smoke a Nicaraguan cigar, it's so strong right when you first light it, because what you're getting is you're getting the strongest part of the leaf. Now, as a manufacturer and as a blender, we can affect that. We don't have to just flip it and put it back there. We can take this tip and we can break it and we can put it in the back. We can take some of the bottom and we can move it to the front. And that's what we call positioning of tobaccos. Now, one of the differences though is because in a Nicaraguan cigar, when you tear it apart, you're gonna look at it and go, oh wow, there's all these short pieces of scrap tobacco in it because of these breaks and these positionings. That's actually a good thing. You expect to see that. Where in a Cuban cigar, because they're doing that break in half and you tear it apart, that ends up all being essentially looking like all one long leaf, even though it's two pieces. And this is also a reason why most Cuban cigars, the large sizes, the Churchills and the double Coronas, were always so rare because their tobaccos are so short that they didn't have the tobaccos to make the longer cigars. And that's why you always had so many Robustos and so many Coronas, because they didn't have the length of filler necessary to actually make as many Churchills and double Coronas. So I was just trying to demonstrate a little bit of technical detail of the differences between how Habanos are put together versus how Nicaraguan and other Central American cigars.
Uau! Uau! É só isso. E bom, temos aqui uma mini plateia hoje. Eu queria saber de vocês. Vocês têm alguma pergunta para fazer para o nosso querido Steve aqui? Quem começa?
Hello. Mr. Saka, what do you think about the market around the world, in principle, and man, the market in Brazil? What do you hope? What do you think the future, the Dunbarton, for example, in that market?
So you want an honest answer? Say you want an honest answer.
Okay.
You know what I know about Brazil? I know Rio de Janeiro, I know Carnival, and I know that girls have very big butts, okay? I know absolutely nothing about Brazil. Seriously. I mean, it's one of the things, and I had this conversation that, look, I don't sell cigars personally internationally. All the cigars, so as I have a relationship with Joya to manufacture some of my products, like Sobremesa and Compromiso and others, they are my international distributor. And they're the ones that have familiarity with all of these other markets. And honestly, I'm completely clueless. And in fact, one of my comments was when I heard that, oh, we're going to sell Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust in Brazil. I'm like, huh? Why? I mean, who's ever heard of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust? It's not Fuente. It's not Padron. It's not Oliva. It's not like some well-known brand. You know what I mean? So I found it rather peculiar and odd. But again, if you're willing to give us money, let's see what happens, right? So I don't have any sense of the Brazilian market. I don't have any sense of what the future is. I have no idea how many cigar smokers are in Brazil. I have no idea what the preferences are. Now, if you ask me about the American market, I know pretty much everything. Okay, I've been intimately involved for well over 30 years. But outside of America, I really am quite ignorant. What I do know is that good is good everywhere, right? So if something is right, I imagine that it's going to be right for most people in most places. Because separate of countries and separate of language barriers, we can all kind of agree this is a good scotch, this is a good wine. Now there's individual unique taste profiles. Like, for example, there's certain markets, like in your case, Brazilian Matafina. Europeans love mass market cigars made with Brazilian Matafina, right? That's a very desirable taste profile for them. So that's something that's unique to that particular market that you know. But honestly, for me, Brazil is a bit of a black hole. So you actually need to tell me, do I have a future there? Is there any hope?
I think the Brazilian people like so much the Dunbarton cigars. Sobremesa, Brazilian people makes crazy about the cigar. Yes or no?
But why? What do you think that is?
Because the profile of the cigar is very interesting because seven different tobaccos inside. Your name, Steve Saka, is a big, huge name in the industry.
How?
The big name in this.
But in Brazil.
Exactly.
My Spanish sucks. You know how bad my Portuguese is? I literally asked, how do you say hi in Portuguese today? I go, oh, I'm like, oh, no, duh. Right? Like,
Obrigado.
You have a bad face, but a good cigar.
Oh my god. Oh, it's very interesting now. Yeah, the people like so much your cigars in Brazil.
do you think
This
that
is
it's
true?
Do you think it's because? So the other thing I was going to say that I think kind of ties everything together is how much more flat the earth has become because of the internet and social media
Exactly.
and podcasts and interviews. So if you're somebody that's really interested in cigars, I mean, look, you can find my fat head talking about cigars and tobacco and all sorts of bullshit in a million different places. So do you think that that's part of it too, that a younger generation is just viewing that and it's getting translated to Portuguese or translated to Spanish, or they're learning English because they're following TikTok and YouTube and
Exactly.
Instagram? Yeah.
Exactly. I remember when recording the first interview, the people, wow, Steve Saka is on the house in Cigars 019. Yeah, Steve Saka is here. The people, oh my God, Steve is here. Because
It's really sad that everyone's more excited to see me than my mother. I mean, that's really depressing.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Let's go.
Wow.
Thank you for watching.
Daniel.
Yes. You say that you do cigars for yourself, for your own taste.
Mm-hmm.
But now talking about the American market, that all the world, I think, follows what happens in the American market when it's related to cigars.
Yeah.
And we have seen in the past people that a trend that people was smoking more smaller cigars, then bigger cigars, or milder cigars, and then stronger. Do you see any other new trend in a couple of years from now?
Well, that's the thing about all trends. It's always going to change. But here's the funny thing. We're basically taking dried weeds and rolling them in a tube the same way we've been doing it for 2 centuries. So there's really never anything truly ever new. There's just things that go in style to then go out of style. So, and what we will see is we will see these same kind of transitions. I mean, I think one of the things, I knew that we in the US were really having a global impact when I started to see Habanos start to make large ring gauge cigars, right? I was like, really? Because I mean, remember, Double Corona was a 49, right? That was as big as it got. And, you know, here we are in America making these, you know, horse penis-sized cigars, you know, it's crazy. And you started to see them start to do these, you know, bahikis and whatnot, and making these, you know, much larger, Robusto-style cigars. You saw that trend. And then you also saw with them the trend, bahiki, back to the same example, with them going with the Medio Tiempo is a bit of a bullshit story, but that cigar is a bit stronger. You saw them also, their regional releases, their special exclusives, tending to track a little stronger too. So there's no doubt, but I think that's also just part of, when I was a kid and I would go to the grocery store and you would go to buy potato chips, there were 3 flavors of potato chips. There was potato chip flavored potato chips, there was sour cream and onion, and there was barbecue. You now go to a potato chip aisle in a grocery store in America, there are 80 different flavors of potato chips, right? I mean, it's just crazy, right? It's like just the variety of potato chips is mind-numbing. We as consumers like to have choices, okay? And that's one of the things that you get when you get outside of, look, most people in my side of the business are anti-Cuban cigar. I'm not. I probably smoke 7, 8, 9,000 Cuban cigars. Okay? So I'm not the anti-Cuban cigar guy. But what I also am is I understand what Cuban cigars are. They're milder. They have an inherent sweetness to them. They have this very unique kind of floral note to the aroma, okay, that honestly, we can't recreate that here. I mean, for so long, the non-Cuban industry would like try to make Cuban-like, Cuban-esque, you know, as an alternative to the Cuban. And I think a big turning moment was when Nicaragua, right around the year 2000, and with the plethora of the stronger, richer, heavier tobaccos we have, stopped doing we're trying to make a cigar that's like Cuba. We're going to make a Nicaraguan cigar, and just be proud of what you do and what it is and the fact that it is different, okay? And once you kind of embrace who you are and what you can do, it then changes your perspective on things. And I think that's the reason why Nicaragua has really excelled, because it hasn't tried to say we're better than, we say we're different. Now, you may think we're better than because you like it better, but it's different than saying you are better than, right? Letting the consumer make that decision based on their own palate. And lucky for us, consumers today, they tend to like spicier ethnic foods. They like more variety. They like stronger bourbons and stronger scotches and spirits, right? Everything has been amped up. So when it comes to cigars, if you want an amped up cigar smoking experience, because even the mild cigars we make here in Nicaragua, they're stronger than most Habano cigars, right? So it's really a good foil. Foil isn't even the right word. It's a good alternative. It's a good option. It gives the consumer something to make a choice between. And I think that's really what drives it, is that desire for diversity and that desire for a wide range, a buffet of flavors to choose from. Because look, there are times I really want just a mild, simple, quiet, easygoing cigar. And there's other times I want something that's, you know.
Eu vou perguntar agora pro Steve. Cara, a gente poderia ficar aqui horas e horas e horas falando, porque o Steve é uma companhia extremamente agradável, cara. É muito legal, porque ele fala o que tem que ser falado. E ponto final. Eu vou perguntar agora para ele sobre o futuro.
Who knows? I've never thought that way about life. You know, they always tell you to make a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. I've always been the person that's just worried about tomorrow. So I've never really had the time to actually sit back and think, you know, where will I be in 5 years? I don't have any grand aspirational goal. I mean, look, I would like for the company to be successful.
Wow.
Right? I mean, the company being successful is good for everybody that works at the company. I enjoy tobacco and I enjoy cigars and I enjoy cigar smokers. So I would like to somehow be involved in that. But right now, you know, I'm just kind of in the weeds. I mean, there's a lot of work to do, you know, so I'm just constantly running from fire to fire to fire. And the whole idea of 5 years from now, that's just almost unfathomable. I can't even tell you what I'm doing, you know, past 2 weeks from now, oftentimes. I mean, I have stuff on my calendar that I know I'm stuck doing, but yeah, I never think about things in those terms. And it's the same way as, you know, so I've had the luxury of being bought out 2 times in the cigar business. I never think about selling. But at the same time, I also know that I'm old enough to not say that I would never sell again, right? Because that's a very foolish thing. Because, you know, what if I have a heart attack? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have to make these kind of decisions. But I mean, right now, I really just kind of like to keep doing what we're doing. I mean, I'd like for it to get a little easier. I'd like for it to get a little more organized. I'd like for it to be a little less stressful, but I've been in the cigar business 30 years, and 30 years, that's never been true. There's always problems. There's problems with tobacco. There's problems with customs. There's problems with government regulation. There's problems with just everything. Labor problems, inflationary problems have been you know, I mean, just think about it. I mean, just in the last 8 years, we had the whole FDA regulation, and then we had the COVID scenario. We had a little mini revolution here in 2018. You know, it's just then we had hyperinflation. I mean, you're just always going from the problem that needs to be solved right now. So, I never understood the people that make, what do they call those boards that you put like your aspirations on? I don't even know what that, a vision board. It just seems so stupid to me. I just can't even wrap my brain around the concept that you can will it and it will make happen. Now, I know that goes counter to everything that's probably written in every self-help book everywhere, but I think those are bullshit too. So I don't know. I just kind of go, you know, problem to problem, next project to next project, and that's kind of the way it goes. And what I do know is just keeping my head down and working. But I grew up in a rough home. Didn't grow up very wealthy. Immigrant family, poor family actually. You know, I left my home when I was 17. I did not have the opportunity to go to university. Enlisted in the Navy. So for me, it's always been just about just work. And if you just keep working, things will be okay. And luckily for me, that has turned out to be the case. So I just focus on work.
Uau. Uau. Eu vou repetir a mesma pergunta da última vez, apesar de saber a resposta, que eu achei engraçadíssima, eu vou fazer novamente. When you go to Brazil?
Will I go to Brazil?
Yeah.
Do I get one of those really wide? No.
Oh my God.
Again, you know how I said I never would say I'd never sell? I won't say I'll never go to Brazil, but you're not going to get me on camera saying I'm coming to Brazil.
Oh my God. Acho que não tem uma forma melhor de terminar a entrevista como essa. Steve, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Thiago.
Thank you, my friend. Cara, é uma diversão enorme fazer esse conteúdo pra vocês. Espero que vocês tenham gostado, porque, cara, pra mim é muito divertido. É muito legal ter essas pessoas da indústria pra falar aqui com a gente. E pessoas que, vão falar e falar o que pensa e ponto. É assim que tem que ser, certo? Quero agradecer aqui o Juan, que tá aqui presente, mais uma vez, por abrir a casa aqui pra gente visitar. Querida, Christian, do time aqui da Joya, muito obrigado. Espero que vocês tenham gostado de mais esse conteúdo. Em breve voltaremos com mais vídeos para vocês. E claro, um beijo desse gordo que vos fala. Até a próxima. Tchau.